There is a brand new 25th anniversary hardback edition of On Writing by Stephen King coming out. Let's take a look at it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson and this is the place where I talk to you about all things Stephen King. Yes, I also recommend great books to you and talk about horror movies as well, but my main bread and butter is Stephen King, and this video is a special unplanned bonus Stephen King thing because, as I mentioned at the start, there is a new 25th anniversary edition of On Writing coming out. Here in the UK, it's coming out on the 17th of July 2025, and completely by surprise, I came home from work yesterday and discovered that Hodder had very kindly sent me a copy. So I thought, what better reason than that to make a video about it and give you a bit of an unboxing, a bit of a closer look at this book, this special edition, and talk a little bit more about On Writing. So that's what we're going to do here. No spoilers for On Writing. If you want my 19 reasons to read On Writing, I'll pop the link up there and I'll put the link in the description as well. But safe to say, On Writing is great, and yeah, I'll probably talk about it a little bit over the course of this video. I haven't planned this video at all, so I'm winging it very much as we go along. So let's see what happens. Now, if you like Stephen King stuff and you want more, there are links in the description to become a member of this channel, a constant viewer, get bonus content, and you can find a few links for my other Stephen King things. I've got a Stephen King trivia book that I wrote. I've got a range of Stephen King themed band shirts, like my Misery Run DMC mashup. And I have my own collection of short stories, which won some awards last year. You can find links for all of those down below. But anyway, just watching this is great. And yeah, let me know what you think of the look of this 25th anniversary edition, and let me know what your thoughts are on Writing as well. For me, and for many, many people across the world, it is a must-read, a must-own memoir on the craft of writing, and as close as we'll probably get to a Stephen King autobiography as well. And yeah, it's been a quarter of a century since it came out now, which is wild, because it came out in 2000, and that can't possibly be 25 years ago, but it is. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to tell you a bit about what's in this book that might not be in previous editions that you've seen, give you a little hint as to some of the stuff in here, and talk a bit about On Writing in general. But first, I mean, we've got a gorgeous cover to look at here. So I think I'm going to hop behind the camera so that I can put this much closer and we can explore some of the little intricacies and the details of this quite beautiful hardback. I don't normally do hardbacks, but this one is lovely. So let's take a closer look at this cover, shall we? Okay, so this is the cover design. It's a similar style to the 50th anniversary edition of Carrie that you can just see on my bookshelf there. I've done a video of previously. So there's no dust jacket. It's just a hardcover with all this coloured foil embossed stuff. But what I really like is, so on the back you just get this this picture of the typewriter with all the splodges going off, and at first glance you might think it's the same here, but then you start to look at the intricacies and the details. So there are a number of pen nibs like here. There are lots of these little flourishes as well. There are a lot of these things which, to be honest, I don't know what they are. They look a bit like badminton shuttlecocks to me, which don't make any sense. So if you know what those are, do let me know. But what I really like is the little King-specific details. So we've got an umbrella for Mr. Mercedes there. We've got a baseball for Faithful, or Facing the Crowd, or Blockade Billy, or just King's love of baseball, head down even. Got a balloon for It. What else have we got here? A tiara for Carrie, prom queen. This one, so it's an insect. I can only assume that it is a wasp from The Shining. It's either that or it's an insect from The Mist. We've got a couple of feathers, which kind of initially made me think of Gwendy's magic feather, but King didn't write that, so it can't be that. So maybe that's from a dream catcher. There's some corn from Children of the Corn. There is this moth here from Sleeping Beauties, a rose from The Dark Tower. This is the the Rockhammer thing from Shawshank. There's a crow here, Randall Flagg, and down here there's a little mouse for the Green Mile, and then all set on a typewriter with a bit of a face on it, and reminds me of Misery. So that is the new cover. Blue and brown foil, blue and bronze maybe. So there you go, beautiful cover. Let's talk a bit more about what's inside, shall we? Okay, so the big thing that's mentioned on the front of the book is that there is a new foreword from King, which is called On Joy. And I will get to that in a moment, but actually the first thing that struck me when I was looking through this was, so you know at the start of books there's usually a selection of quotes from reviews. And we get that here. We get reviews from like The Independent, The Sunday Times, which says absolutely fascinating. Yeah, great review. Daily Telegraph, The Guardian, Jeremy Vine, for some reason. If you don't know who Jeremy Vine is, he's an idiot boomer DJ from over here, Radio 2. Supposedly a journalist, but not a very good one. But before that, and giving it way more credibility actually than just a bunch of positive reviews from mainstream media outlets, we get quotes from loads of different authors. So we get Donna Tartt, Margaret Atwood, Stephen Graham Jones, Tom Perrotta, John Grisham, S.A. Cosby, Victor Laval, Dana Spiotta, Lauren Groff, Michael Chabon. And that's really, I really like that as an addition. And I'd love to see more of that in Stephen King reissues, is just getting other contemporary authors to talk about King and the books. So what's nice is that some of these, like, they just don't even restrict themselves to talking about on writing. They just heap praise on Stephen King. So, you know, like Donna Tartt opens her bit with saying, not only is Stephen King one of the writers whom I credit with making me a novelist, but he was also the writer who, at a key time, gave reading back to me. And then there's this really interesting story about how she discovered The Dead Zone and how that really opened stuff up for her. And she recommended it to her own mother. And it was a real bonding experience for her and her mum. And she later says, on writing leads you directly in through the back door of that vast building into the long hall of closed doors and says, go ahead, try, you can do it. Talking about how generous a teacher King is as well. Then there's Margaret Atwood. So she contributed a foreword to the 50th anniversary edition of Carrie. Didn't really like that foreword, to be honest, but this is good. Just talking about, picking out some stuff that he mentions in On Writing. The ultimate horror for him, as it was for Dickens, is human cruelty, and especially cruelty to children. She says, he writes horror, the most literary of forms, especially when it comes to the supernatural, which must perforce be inspired by already existing tales and books. But underneath the horror in King is always the real horror, the all too actual poverty and neglect and hunger and abuse that exists in America today. Stephen Graham Jones, what does he have to say? Part craft book, part style guide, all memoir. This big little book is essential for anyone hoping to take part in the mystery and muscle of storytelling, which is a great summation. I'd also just say it's a fascinating read for anyone who's interested in reading at all. Tom Perrotta says On Writing only gets better with age. It's a complex and engaging book full of practical wisdom and illuminating anecdotes grounded in a lifetime of storytelling experience. John Grisham, if you dream of writing novels, start with this timeless book. S.A. Cosby, Stephen King opened his soul in On Writing. He showed us all through his wisdom and his candour, not only what epiphanies writing can bring to the reader, but also the author. On Writing is a touchstone for the artistic life, a life that chooses us despite all our flaws. It is a gift beyond measure. I mean, that is such a beautiful and poetic way of summing up Stephen King and this book. I really, really enjoyed that. Victor Laval just doesn't even talk about On Writing, but yeah, talks about reading Skeleton Crew and how much he loved that, but great quote. Dana Spiotta, On Writing is a generous and honest book about how hard work and creativity can transform a life. Lauren Groff, Stephen King's On Writing is my favourite book about the art and life of the writer. When I teach the book, its clarity, honesty and gentleness always help to demystify the craft for my anxious beginners. And when I'm alone in my room with my own work and the doubt begins to swallow me whole, I turn to it to remember that a writer should always be humble, hardworking and grateful to live the life of the imagination. And then Michael Chabon says, this is a special book animated by a unique intelligence and filled with useful truth. So some really cool additions there, I think, to just your standard newspaper reviews. And then we move into the book itself. There's literally a whole page of Stephen King's other works. And then I like this little reproduction of Dave's Rag, which was the magazine that King and his brother made when they were at school, and is what I've paid tribute to in my own newsletter, which you can find a link to sign up for at the bottom of this video. And then we get into the book itself. So this is definitely like an expanded edition. If you've only got the original version of On Writing, you'll definitely find more in here. So we going from the back forwards, there are a couple of additions here that were added in the 20th anniversary edition. So we get a really nice transcribed conversation between Joe Hill, King's eldest son, and Stephen King. And they are bouncing questions off each other, answering questions from the audience. It's a really nice chat. If you've not read it, I'd definitely look it up. Some fun stuff in there, and you get a sense of their relationship as well. And then there's a great essay from Owen King, King's other son, who is also an author, talking about how he used to record audiobooks for his dad, which King started him doing when he was a kid. He used to pay him pocket money to just record books for King to listen to. And what I really liked about that is learning that the two of them still do record books for each other, and how Owen talks about how he really enjoys doing a long drive and having a CD recording of his dad reading a book to him, and he praises how good King's reading is as well. Some nice stuff there. And then at the back end as well, so King in the original edition put a load of books in that he really recommended people reading, and he's added to that in subsequent editions. So I think in the 10th anniversary edition and the 20th anniversary edition. So we get a whole host of books that he has read and recommends. Let's have a look. So the original edition was up to 2000. Then there was an extra list for the 10th anniversary, which was stuff he read between 2001 and 2009. And then more stuff for the 20th anniversary edition between 2010 and 2019. So that's kind of your back matter. And the bulk of the stuff itself is the same as it's always been. So there's CV, the first section, which is basically King's sort of closest thing we're going to get to an autobiography from King. It talks about his upbringing, about his falling into love of writing and all of that kind of stuff. And it is a fascinating read. You understand so much more about him as a person and his motivations. If you're even slightest bit interested in Stephen King, it's worth getting On Writing just for that section. And then there's the toolbox section, which is kind of his practical guidance for writing, which if you're even considering trying a bit of writing, you absolutely have to read. There are lots of very celebrated style books out there, but I think, as I've said before, possibly on my 19 Reasons to Read this book, On Writing is one of those books that I have seen on the shelves of friends of mine who are writers who have never read Stephen King, and yet they know the power of that book. So if you're interested in writing at all, or you know someone who is, this book needs to be on yours or their shelves. And then we get the section on writing, where he's talking about the power of writing, and then a postscript called On Living. So this book was mainly written before his 1999 accident, where he was hit by a minivan driver and almost killed. But he was doing the revisions and stuff while recovering from that, sat with his leg propped up under the desk and sort of doing things by hand. And On Living is like this postscript he wrote, where he's just getting across this new perspective about finishing the book and still being around. And you get him going through his early draft of 1408, and you get like actual scans of him doing his amends and stuff. So again, you kind of brings everything together. The autobiographical stuff, the tools, the practical advice, the love of writing. It's all there. It's great. And then coming forward again, we have 3 forewords for this book. And I think they're all there in the initial one. The there's like one that's basically just thanking his editor, one that's starts, this is a short book because most books about writing are filled with bullshit. And then he talks about which books you should read. And then there's a sort of slightly longer foreword where he talks about his band, the Rock Bottom Remainders, that he formed with a bunch of other authors, and how playing a few shows with that kind of gave him the genesis of this idea to write on writing. And then we get the new edition, which is On Joy, which is the new foreword for this particular edition. And it's basically just, it's nice. I love reading King's little essays and introductions. I think he's got such a good voice for them. And you could argue it doesn't add too much, but it's just a nice little addition. And it kind of sums up here. So here's King talking about it. So I thumbed through On Writing and asked myself if there was anything I might have left out. Anything that was worth writing more about, that is. I decided yes, there was one thing. Joy. And then he just talks about just how joyous he finds writing. So from his first published story, The Glass Floor in 1967, and to, like, as I was just saying, doing the amends for this while he was recovering from that accident. So he says, I worked on this book after being struck by a minivan while I was out for an afternoon walk with my broken legs stretched out under a desk. And do you know what? The worst day I ever had was fucking great. And yeah, he just talks about how much joy comes up throughout when he thinks about his career and what he's achieved, and the fact that he just likes to share his stories with people. Talks in great detail about one scene in the raft and how joyous, even though it was a particularly gruesome scene, he still got so much joy from writing it. And yeah, it's nice. Like, nothing lasts forever, and I fully realise I've got a lot more road behind me than there is ahead. But over the years, I have had a chance to hone what talent God or whoever gave me. Have I given my constant readers pleasure as we walk that road together? Taken them away from the everyday and plunged them into a world of make-believe? In other words, have I given them a measure of joy? If so, understand that I felt that joy first, that delight in the story. Would you like to do this job? Okay, get started. I wish you well. And I wish you joy. So, yeah, it's always the way with these anniversary editions, isn't it? There's a part of you that can just be like, well, this is just for the completionists and the collectors. But there is something comforting and weighty, and that gives this book the gravitas that it deserves, this edition. Like, it is a Stephen King classic, and it is being put out there as a classic. And the hardback treatment, just the lush edition, the fact that he brings his family, his kids in at the end with those extra bits. Like, it's such a fantastic book. And if you don't have it already, then absolutely pick up this edition, because it's gorgeous and it's got everything you need in there. Yeah, you could get one of the paperback editions of the previous ones, but I think this is a real treat for any writer, for any Stephen King fan, for most readers, to be honest. Even if you're not that big on Stephen King, you'll find a lot in this. So I'm just delighted that this book exists, and that it's getting some special treatment for its silver anniversary, which again feels wild. But there we go. That's a sort of unboxing mini review of the 25th anniversary edition of On Writing. Yeah, it's a wonderful book. You need to have it in your life. And this edition is gorgeous, so why not start with that? Comes out, this edition in the UK comes out on the 17th of July, and I am so incredibly grateful to Hodder for them sending me this. It really brought absolute, as King says, brought absolute joy to my whole being when I got home from work and opened this. So yeah, there we go. Thanks. That was a bit of an unplanned special. I hope you enjoy this. Let me know if you like the look of this edition. Let me know what you think these shuttlecocks are. And let me know if you're going to pick up On Writing if you haven't already got a copy. And if you have read On Writing, what's your favourite bit of it? All of that kind of stuff. Get involved. But again, 17th of July, this edition comes out. It's gorgeous. You should get it. Thank you, Hodder. And thanks you for watching. And I'll see you again very soon.